Welcome to the Halloween Half Hour with Christopher Ripley, Boston White, and me, the spooky voice guy.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Halloween Half Hour. My name is Christopher Ripley, and I am comfortably joined this evening by...
It's Boston White, aka Amanda. Good evening.
How you doing, Amanda? You okay?
I'm trying to be my spookiest self.
Well, that's a very good point, because that is what this podcast is all about. We are going to be bringing you Halloween every day of the year. Well, we're not going to release a podcast every day of the year.
That would be a lot of work.
We're going to pretend that Halloween is a celebration that goes on all year long, because this is the podcast that will basically be chatting about, reviewing, talking, interviewing special guests, all things Halloween, horror, and sort of things that go bump in the night. We have got a packed program of different things coming up. We've got trip reports, we've got news stories, we've got interviews, and not just this episode. We're planning out, we just had a production meeting. We're planning out episode 5 and 6 at the moment, even though this is our very first one. Amanda, you just got back from your hollybobs. How was your vacation?
It was exhausting, but it was a scarily good time. It was so much fun. Every day is Halloween in Boston Whiteland. I celebrate it every single day of my life, so this podcast is absolutely perfect for us. But I had so much fun. I did an awful lot of Halloween and horror related things. And of course, the Halloween technical season isn't over yet, so I still have an awful lot more things to do. This is my most tyrant time of the year.
Well, this is it. I mean, you could argue that we're going into sort of, say, Krampus season. Can we stretch it out to that, do you think?
Honestly, yeah. And then we go right up into February, and then that's Bloody Valentine. And then you go into March, and then it's Leprechaun.
Yeah.
April, Spooky Easter.
Spooky Easter, murderous bunnies.
Yeah, we can go all year.
Yeah, we can go all year. We got plenty of stuff coming up. And talking of stuff coming up for today's show, we're just about to go into the news section. Not a lot to report this week because we've got a packed show. But we've got a really fascinating interview that I did recently with Victoria Price, Vincent Price's daughter.
Oh, my God.
I know. She is absolutely a phenomenal lady to speak to. But before we go into that, let's go into the news.
Need a news jingle.
Yeah. Amanda, you got a news story for us. Mine's not that interesting, but let's go with yours first.
Okay, so during my trip in Orlando, I was lucky enough to be invited to the media preview of Orlando's newest, spookiest bar, Cocktails and Screams. Amazing. Oh my gosh.
Very jealous.
It was incredible. It was so much fun. It's a little bit out of the way if you're a tourist going for Disney and Universal. But to be honest, downtown Orlando is about a 15-minute drive from Universal. So it's not terrible. Easily Uberable.
Okay, because that used to be the place to be with Church Street Station and the different nightclubs they had there, because that was kind of where Universal got the idea for their Halloween event. So
it is, and obviously Terror on Church Street is part of the Passage group, and we have Passage del Terror in Blackpool, which is one of my all-time favourite UK haunts. So it all ties in together. But I often Uber to downtown Orlando because I go to a lot of gigs there, and so it is easily accessible. It's a lot closer than what people think. But if you're an Orlando local, this should be your every night hangout spot, because I know it will be mine.
Yeah,
honestly.
If we lived out there, definitely would be, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. I even had cocktails. And if you guys listen to any of the other podcasts that me and Chris do, you know that I try and stay away from cocktails because of the danger zone. But these cocktails were horror-themed. They were smoking.
Ooh.
Some of them had sausage sticks inside of them.
What?
So there was this one called the Leatherface, which was kind of their take on a Bloody Mary. And it had, I don't know what you call them in America, but to us Brits, the pepperonis.
Oh God, yeah.
Little sausage sticks.
Sort of like jerky.
It was kind of like a beet straw.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't have that on, but my friend Keenan did have that one. I had a Frankenstein, which was their take on an old fashioned.
Okay, whiskey is that? I think.
Don't remember off the top of my head because I was very drunk.
Okay.
They're very strong cocktails. But I do have a picture of the menu, so I will post that.
I'm gonna put that on my list for next time I'm out there because I think I left before it opened this year. I mean, I'm a huge, as you know, Trader Sam's fan.
Yes.
And I collect the tikis and things like that. I mean, they don't do that, do they? Do they do that there? Like tikis?
They do have a drink that was called, I think, the Leaky Tiki, which my friend Johnny from Hornsey has. They don't have like souvenir cups or anything like that right now, but they do have a pumpkin cocktail, which is a shareable one, which you get in a pumpkin trick-or-treat little basket.
Oh, right.
And then you just all kind of stick straws in it and drink it, which is cool. They have snack options with like poisoned apples and like meat and grape kind of salads.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be adding more things in the future. This was just a preview night. They've been adding things over the last couple of weeks actually. So when I went, it was obviously a preview. They had all of the cocktails on display that you could have.
Yeah.
They have different photo kind of opportunities. So they have an Addams Family set with Morticia's wicker chair and the big stuffed polar bear. Incredible. Wow. They had the corridor from the Overlook Hotel from The Shining.
Oh, you're joking, really? Oh, man.
So I made every single person take a picture holding my hand like we were Grady twins in this corridor. Every person I walked past, I was like, we're twins now.
Because you did a video of that with you and Ash, didn't you? I remember rightly.
I did. So I made me and Ash Grady Twins costumes a couple of years ago when Halloween Horror Nights had The Shining house. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love The Shining, so I'm so happy to see that there.
Yeah.
They have a huge array of pinball machines based on horror. So they had a Monsters one, they had Nightmare on Elm Street, an Elvira one. It is honestly amazing. It is such a cool place to be for a horror fan, and I felt like it was overwhelming trying to take everything in such a short amount of time, but it's just so cool. They have an organist.
Really?
Every night he performs. So his introduction was him playing the Phantom of the Opera, and then they have a live performer who is a vampire, and she sings songs from Dusk Till Dawn. She'll sing all kind of like spooky related songs. Maybe
it was just me. I knew it was opening, but I didn't see like a big announcement or a sort of a statement of what they were going to be, offering. But I mean, if they're doing this kind of thing, every night or just weekends or whatever, I mean, it sounds really good. I'm really jelly.
Absolutely. So it is open every single day except Mondays.
Oh, okay.
So they're there for every kind of spooky evening need. They're actually starting to do brunch now too.
That's interesting.
So you can go and have a spooky little brunch, have some little afternoon mimosas, and watch films and have spooky cereal, if that's how you're inclined. I know that I am. The whole concept of it is just cool to me. Like, I wish that we had things like this in the UK, and I'm sure that there are things dotted around. I know that there's quite a few horror themed bars, but it tends to be not to this extent. This is next level. Absolutely. And there's another thing that they are going to be adding in the coming months, which I can't talk about. They told me I'm not allowed to, but all that I'm going to say is that it's going to be cool as F, and it's going to be a very witch and tan.
Oh, okay.
One of the best parts that I forgot to mention, by the way, is if you like Hooters and you like going to Hooters to look at the ladies, this is Spooky Girl Hooters.
Oh, okay. Like goth chicks, but,
Goth chicks, fully tattooed, wearing tiny little witch outfits. Mm-hmm. And there was an awful lot of flirting going on. I spent an awful lot of money. A lot of cocktails that I didn't drink.
Do they sell any merchandise there, though?
They do. So they have T-shirts there right now. I'm sure they'll get more things in the future, like hat. I think they might have even had like a snapback hat, if I remember correctly. why am I going to have more? But the theming is incredible. So I know that the owner also owns Joysticks in Orlando, which is an arcade bar, which is very popular. But he did work for a company that would work with Universal Studios and also Walt Disney World in their theming departments. So the theming is next level. Around the bar is like catacombs. So it's all skulls. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean the photos. I mean they probably don't do it justice, but it looks really cool just from them.
Absolutely, I'll post more of those on our Twitter page as well.
Yeah.
And I think that it's my 30th birthday next year, along with Halloween Horror Night's 30th event. And what I'm planning so far is to have my 30th birthday party at Cocktails and Screams, and everybody's invited.
Oh man, that'd be awesome! Great. Is there anything else you want to mention on this new bar?
They have costume parties. So far they're having them every week.
Oh right.
I'm guessing that's just for Halloween. I don't know if that's going to be an every week thing going forward, but they'll be having things like quiz nights as well. They had a Tim Burton themed one a few days ago, so they just unveiled their Countdown to Halloween clock, like from Nightmare Before Christmas, and their Oogie Boogie photo op area. So they had a huge Tim Burton themed party for that. So basically it's going to be party time all the time at Cocktails and Screams.
Yeah, I mean it sounds absolutely phenomenal, and I love it when these bars go all out with the theming and with the menu and stuff. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to going there.
Yes.
So on to my news story. I recently saw the Joker movie, and the news that's coming out of Hollywood at the moment is that it's looking as though the Joker movie will become the biggest R-rated movie in film history.
What?
Yeah, it's nearly beat Deadpool. Hasn't quite yet beat Deadpool, but it's nearly beat the second one. I think was the highest rated. I'm not sure. First one or second one of the two was the highest rated R movie. But some estimates are saying that it may go as high as $1 billion in revenue. Can you believe?
Well, yes and no, because I feel like every person that I know has seen it. Everybody that I know. So it came out whilst I was away, and I was like, right, as soon as I get back, I have to see it, because every time I was going to the cinema beforehand, I was watching the trailer and I was like, oh my God, I'm so freaking excited. But I just haven't had time yet this week. So it was on my list for next week, for sure. Or well, this week now, because we're on Monday. But every other person that I know seems to have seen it, even people that I would never have expected to go and see it from seeing the trailer seem to have gone.
Yeah, a very close friend of mine, he's seen it 3 times in the cinema.
Wow.
He hates anything to do with superhero films. He's one of these sort of sticklers for pure cinema, high-end stuff. So I was quite surprised when he told me he's seen it 3 times. So yeah, so I'm wondering if he's a serial killer in disguise now. Because you do go a little mad, I think, watching the film. Because essentially, the film is about a man that goes mad. Really, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. But it has a lot of messages about society as a whole, and the way in which the media goes about its business. And for Warner Brothers, they must be absolutely surprised with this, because apparently the budget was only sort of $55-60 million, and if it breaks the $1 billion mark, I mean, that is, for them, that's a huge cash in the bank for them. And I'm told that they had incredibly low expectations for this film. They hadn't done very much marketing apparently, and they gave the film to Todd Phillips, who really his only claim to fame is that he did the Hangover trilogy.
Oh. Yeah,
so this film just really came out of nowhere. Nobody sort of suspected it would do so well. So it's, I think this is the reason I sort of bring it up, really, is that I just thought it was just tremendous that this R-rated film is doing so well.
I'm incredibly excited about seeing it. I think when the very, very first small trailer came out, I remember it being posted on Twitter and people being like, nope. And I was like, yes, this looks interesting. And then when I saw the full trailer, I was like, oh my God, yes. And then every time I'd see it afterwards, I was like, you need to see this film. It looks so dark.
Yeah.
Have to see it. And I can't actually believe that I've waited this long.
Yeah.
I had full plans of getting off the plane in the afternoon and going straight to the cinema.
Really?
But of course I was exhausted, so I didn't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been good. It would have been a waste of money. I would have fell asleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's already leaped past, it's getting towards what Wonder Woman took, which was, a huge hit for Warner's. And, I mean, if it does start edging over that $1 billion mark, then, it's going to be as successful as their other films, the Dark Knight series and stuff like that. I mean, that's just unheard of for an R-rated film, which, is restricting that sort of wider family audience that may go and see it. It's just adults, so that's pretty good, isn't it?
I can't wait to see it so that we can actually talk about it in depth without trying to avoid you spoiling it for me.
This is it. I can't say too much. I mean, I can say that the lead actor, whose name I can never pronounce.
I can't say it either. I call him Jacqueline Phoenix.
I heard somebody on the radio call him Joaquin.
Yeah, I've heard Joaquin. I've heard Haquin.
Yeah.
I've heard Jacqueline. Is that what I called him? Jacqueline Phoenix? Yeah, that's what I called him.
Yeah. So anyway, his performance is absolutely outstanding in it. And also, to a lesser degree, but still good performance, is Robert De Niro, who's in it as well, which was quite surprising. But he's playing a type of character that he's played before, essentially. And it's not too much of a stretch for him, I don't think. But it's still a good performance by him. But, the lead actor, he must be in every single scene. And there's some really clever bits as well, because without ruining it too much, there is a couple of scenes that go back to back where the audience is essentially laughing at him, and you think it was a mistake, but actually it builds into something later on. And I thought that was actually very, very clever, because I hadn't really ever seen anything like that where they sort of double bluffed, if you like, the audience. So I recommend it. It's worth seeing. Don't know if I'll bother seeing it again, but
Not 3 times now.
I wouldn't see it 3 times at the cinema on my own on a wet Tuesday. I mean, that just adds to the serial killer theory, really, doesn't it?
I think the only films that I've ever seen that I can remember, like in recent years anyway, multiple times, was I saw Us twice. And I saw The Shape of Water twice at the cinema.
Did I ever tell you my funny story about the Halloween film that came out last year, that I ended up seeing it, I think I saw it 4 times in the cinema?
What?
Yeah, well, what it was...
No, you did not.
I think it was 4 times. What it was, I wanted to see it when it first came out the opening weekend, because I was really excited for it. And I was right, because it is a really good film. And we've both said that they've ripped off you and I's characters at the very beginning of that film.
Oh, yes, with the podcasters.
Yeah, just as an aside, 2 British podcasters that just do shows about spooky stuff. Anyway, and so my wife is not a huge horror fan, so she would not have entertained seeing it. It's bad enough I have to drag her through Halloween Horror Nights, let alone see a horror movie. So I asked my good friend, the serial killer, and he was like, oh no, I'm out that weekend. So then I thought, I'll ask my brother. No, I can't do it. So then another friend of mine I asked, no, I can't do it. So I asked about 4 people in the end, and all of them said they weren't available, couldn't see it. So I thought, should I go and see it on my own? I thought, no, I won't be that guy sitting there on a Friday night with, the couples sitting there watching it. So anyway, just to cut a long story short, all of them, one by one, came back to me and said, oh, by the way, I'm not doing what I'm doing now. I'm actually can come with you. So I ended up going almost back to back to watch this damn film. And do you remember that episode of The Vicar of Dibley where she gets invited to everybody's Christmas dinner?
Yes.
It was literally like that.
I would have loved life watching Halloween that many times.
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, luckily, Halloween is such a good film to see, but I have seen that film in cinema, I think it was 4 times. And the other film I saw, I think it was 3 times, was in the cinema anyway, was Skyfall.
Oh.
When it first came out. But then that was a huge blockbuster back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go on to our interview that I did with Victoria Price.
The Halloween half-hour special guest interview.
Victoria Price, hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you very much, and welcome to the Halloween half hour.
Thanks for having me on.
Let's dive straight in. First question, when was you first aware of how famous and how admired your father was?
You know, I grew up in Southern California in Hollywood, and a lot of the kids that I went to school with were kids of famous people. And so I think it was really just kind of more the norm, you know? I just thought this was, I guess it would be like growing up in Detroit and everybody's family worked for one of the automobile makers. So, you know, I didn't really think of my dad as special because he was famous. I really thought of my dad as special because he was special. You know, he was just this huge, bright light. And I could see all the time how much joy he brought to people and how much he absolutely loved what he did and how much people loved him. And so that seemed a lot more special to me than let's say, you know, that he was an actor.
Yeah. What was it actually like, though, growing up in the 60s and 70s in Hollywood, of all places?
Well, you know, I guess whatever your norm is seems like your norm. And so, you know, I had no idea that people didn't live like I did in this, you know, beautiful weather all the time with so much privilege. Of course, I watched the news and I saw how the world lived, but I was really, you know, as I've gotten older, only now have I really recognized that the way I grew up was very unusual and really quite extraordinary.
I believe we're both art history majors. Is that right?
Yes, we are. How cool.
So how important was art and history to your father and your relationship with him?
So important. It was incredibly important. My dad's greatest passion was art history. He became an actor while he was studying to be an art historian in London. And he remained deeply, deeply passionate about the visual arts. He lectured on the visual arts every year, 60 cities and 65 days every year for 30 years. He was a passionate art collector. He started a museum. He ran an art gallery. He served on countless museum boards, and I could go on and on. It was profoundly important to him.
Wow, I literally had no idea. I mean, I'd obviously done my research, but I didn't know that he was sort of lecturing as well as collecting his art as well.
Oh yes, absolutely.
You published a book, Vincent Price, A Daughter's Biography, in 1999. How did that come about, and how did you find the process of recounting all of those wonderful memories?
Well, as my dad was getting older and getting ill, his body gave out, but his mind was still really active. So I had a job where I worked until basically 1 o'clock every day, and then I wrote in the afternoon. So I went up to him at his house, and I interviewed him 3 afternoons a week, and we talked about art. We talked about his life in the visual arts and what was important to him in the visual arts. And after he died, people didn't want that book, just a book about his life in the visual arts. They wanted the entire biography. And honestly, you know, I didn't know nearly as much as pretty much anybody else on the planet about his horror movies. And I certainly didn't know much about what happened in his life other than through the stories that he told me. I knew what the stories were. And I wasn't really keen necessarily on becoming his biographer, but I realized pretty quickly that publishers wanted a biography, and that if I didn't tell the stories he told me and really tell people how important the arts were to my dad, then nobody would know that. And so that's how it came about. And yeah, absolutely, it was challenging to talk about some of the things that you have to talk about as a biographer. Mm-hmm. But I'm very, very grateful to have had that opportunity, really, because I got to know him better through it.
Mm-hmm. Two of my other sort of most admired people from these days of Hollywood was Walt Disney and Alfred Hitchcock. And your father worked with all the greats, but those two in particular, particularly Hitchcock, he was quite friendly with Alfred Hitchcock. Is that right?
Yeah, and, he didn't do one of his movies, which I think is a real shame, but he did do the TV show Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And, my dad truly was nobody my dad wasn't friendly with. He just was,
Really?
He loved people and he was so personable. So if he met somebody, they loved him and he loved them. And it just went on from there. Of course, he had his closest circle of friends, obviously, but he was just somebody who got along really well with people.
Yeah. I'm obviously speaking to you today from the UK. He did a lot of work here. He did a lot of movies and TV shows and plays and things. Is there any sort of interesting stories from his time working over this side of the pond?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, he loved working in the UK. In those days, it wasn't like now. You had to to get a work permit to work as an American in England was challenging. I think on every production they allowed, two non-UK citizens to work. I may be wrong about that, but that's what I was told by my dad. And he was one of them on every production. And he saw that as a huge honor. In other words, he didn't say, well, I'm the star, of course they want me. He held, English theater and English actors and English production values in such high esteem that to be able to work in England and be so well loved and well respected was hugely important to him. To work in London or in and around London was so much fun for him. He had many good friends who were gallery owners, many good friends who were actors, many good friends who lived there. In those days, Portobello Road was this great adventure. And so he would go out on Saturdays or Sundays and, find, wonderful things that you really could find in those days. So
must have been an Aladdin's cave for
pretty
him.
Neat. Oh, totally.
Did you accompany him on any of his travels to London?
Oh, yes, we went all the time. My mother was very adamant that he never felt like we were sort of hanging over him. And she was also very adamant that I have as normal of a life as possible. So basically we went anytime there was a vacation and joined him in England. And I have very fond memories of that. And, now that I go to the UK once or twice a year to do events that honor my dad, I feel like I'm connecting those dots and I love doing them.
I sadly missed your last one. I believe you were doing a presentation at a pub in London near King's Cross that's sort of themed to Hitchcock, but it was to do with your father.
Yes, it was really fun. That was a couple of years ago. I was in England twice for events this year, once in Sheffield, and then I did 2 in Glasgow and 1 in Edinburgh and 1 in London and 2 in Wales in September. So I love coming back, and I have a plan for a really fun series of events and a tour in around Halloween in 2020.
Oh, lovely. I must make a note to catch up with you when you're back next year then.
I would love that.
Away from his work, you've mentioned obviously art and we've mentioned travel, but he was also quite an accomplished fisherman and also quite a gourmet cook as well, I believe.
Yes. Fishing was something he had loved ever since he was a little boy, and he continued to love it whenever he had the opportunity to go deep sea fishing. He wasn't a fly fisherman, but he loved deep sea fishing. And so if he had an opportunity, was on vacation someplace and he could go out, he loved that. And yes, he was an amazing cook. It really began because he loved to eat. And he would collect recipes and then try and replicate them for friends at home. And that eventually led to he and my mother writing a series of cookbooks that became very, very famous and remain incredibly popular to this day.
No, that's I honestly, until I'd done the research, I knew he obviously had done a lot of TV stuff about that. I didn't realize actually how many books he'd also published in regards to different recipes and cooking.
Yeah.
We touched on it earlier, the Disney productions that he'd been attached to. He'd done quite a lot of different projects with the Disney company over the years. Did your father ever get to work directly with Walt Disney himself?
No, he didn't, I don't think.
No. His narration, I believe, has been returned as the ghost host at Phantom Manor in Disneyland Paris. How does that make you feel?
Oh, fantastic. And Paris Disney was gracious enough to invite us and host us a few weeks after it opened. And so we got a wonderful behind-the-scenes tour and really learned about the whole ethos of Paris Disney and of the parks in general. It was really, really fascinating to see the amazing details that went into the creation of each park. And then we got to go on Phantom Manor, and that was so much fun.
Yeah, it is a fantastic ride. Phantom Manor is very special, that one. He also worked quite a bit with probably one of his biggest fans towards the end of his life, Tim Burton. He did obviously the short film Vincent and some other ones, as well as the main swan song of his was Edward Scissorhands, which I believe you also co-starred in that with him.
Yes.
How was that, working on that production?
Well, Tim, it was this amazing gift because he really loved meeting young people, reaching out to young people and connecting with young people. And that was toward the beginning of Johnny Depp's career. And he and my dad were both Geminis, and they really clicked and connected. And then, of course, Tim was, young at the beginning of his career. And so my dad got to work with these two amazingly talented young people, and they introduced him to a whole new generation. So I really feel like it was such a gift.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm pushing 40 now. That's exactly where I first was introduced to your father, and then I sort of did my research and found all his films back when I was a kid. So I was definitely one of those intake from that time. Right,
because again, how do you find out about people? Well, if you see something or you hear something, let's say like Thriller, and you think, wow, what's that voice? Who's that person? And you learn about them that way. It's a very cool thing. Mm. And that's exactly what happened with my dad.
I mean, that is such a gift to, Edward Scissorhands probably one of his last movies. There's such a gift to sort of go out in that way on such a high with so much praise and admiration from a whole new fan base.
It was a profound gift, and I will forever be grateful to Tim for creating that opportunity and really creating that beautiful, beautiful swan song. Mm.
Victoria Price, you're a speaker, an author, life coach, designer, artist, minister even, I found out in my research. Moving the story to you now, what is the daily practice of joy that you write about?
It began because I really had sort of turned into a workaholic as I was approaching my 50s, and I realized that I was just continually working and trying to do the right thing and feeling really miserable in the process. And that happened to be the year that my dad turned 100, the year that I sort of realized I needed to change something in my life. Mm-hmm. And so I went out on the road, and people wanted to connect with my dad through me. And so standing in his shoes, I remembered what a joy-filled person he was. And I began experiencing that in my own life because of how it felt to sort of channel him, really. And then when that year ended, I found that it was kind of hard to get back to. And I would so easily get tripped back up into going back into workaholism. And so I realized that I had to create a practice of joy. I had to stop just talking about wanting more joy, and I had to practice joy. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. Like, how do you practice something you're just supposed to feel? Mm-hmm. So I figured it out by, first of all, figuring out what practice is and what components of practice are, which is showing up to something every single day in a very conscious and deliberate way. And then I sort of had to figure out what joy meant to me. I knew what joy felt like, but how do you practice something you just feel? And I read this great definition that joy was the pure and simple delight in being alive. And I realized that that's what my dad felt all the time, this pure and simple delight in being alive. And that's what he exuded. And so I all of a sudden realized that I needed to just find ways to practice that every day. And so I did. I walked, I smelled the roses, I played with my dog. I binged watched episodes of I Love Lucy, a show that I'd loved as a kid. And at the end of the day, I really remembered what it was like to feel joy, frankly, because I was doing it every day. Like for those 20 or 30 or 40 minutes a day that I was practicing joy, I was joy filled. And that really led me to this big shift in my life. And in fact, my next book is all about practice. It's about creating these heart-centered practices that change your life, because instead of just talking about who you want to be, you live as if you're the person you always knew you were in your heart.
So do you think that sort of on a subconscious level, your father was doing the practice of joy all those years?
All the time, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's not to say he was constantly, happy and upbeat, and he had his downtimes the same as everybody else. He had difficulties, he had stresses, and all of those things. But the bottom line is, he knew that he'd been given the amazing good fortune of having a life where he got to do what he loved to do. How many people get to do that? And so basically, he was constantly wanting to give back the good that he'd received. And so he really realized that the greatest gift of his life was to help other people feel better about their lives and good in their own lives. And that is what he did all the time.
Is that how the Vincent Price Art Museum also came about?
Yeah, that came about through my mom and my dad in the 40s and 50s. They began being a part of this school that had a wonderful art department, and that brought them and other people joy. And then they had the opportunity to give 90 pieces of their own art collection to the school. And over their lifetime, they ended up giving another, they ended up giving 2,000 pieces total. And now It's an incredible art collection in Los Angeles.
Gosh, that's an incredible amount of artwork. And your new book, is that the Way of Being Lost? Is that the new one you're working on, or is that the one that's just been released?
The Way of Being Lost was last year, and this one will be 2020.
Oh, very nice. Are you currently working on any other projects or anything else you're involved with that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I've, got lots of little fun things percolating, but in terms of Vincent Price, Peter Fuller and I are constantly trying to grow the Vincent Price legacy in the UK with tours and events, and Peter does wonderful film location tours. So definitely check out the Vincent Price Legacy UK and what Peter Fuller's doing. And I, for the Halloween season, I'm doing all kinds of fun events all over the US, and then we'll continue to lead tours here and in Europe.
Well, I'm definitely going to catch one of those when you come over to the UK, that's for sure.
I hope so. I would love to have you come see what we're doing, but also connect with other Vincent Price fans. That's really the most fun part of the whole thing is really getting a sense of, how connected Vincent Price still allows people to be with one another through his work. I've had the gift of making wonderful friendships with Vincent Price fans.
No, that's absolutely marvellous. Thank you. Thank you for coming on to the Halloween Half Hour, and thank you for also everything you do to keep his legacy alive and kicking. It is what you do is just so marvellous, and there's just there needs to be more Vincent Price.
Well, here's the thing I really came to realize. We all have legacies of love, and those are the only legacies that last. And really that love is something that was passed down to us by the people who loved us. And whether it came through, let's say you had a grandmother that you watched horror movies with or baked lasagna with, or a dad you went fishing with or learned how to repair cars with, whatever those things that you did with somebody you loved and who loved you growing up, those are our legacies of love. Mine just happened to be with a famous person, but I certainly have others from other people, like my mother, who although she's well known, certainly isn't as well known as my dad. And for me, the gift is that I carry that love inside me, and I get to share it with other people who love my dad, which is a profound gift. And that love gets to connect us all. But I hope it also inspires people to share their legacies of love. You know, there are people who dream of doing something they've loved doing their whole life, and they don't know whether it's possible to do that. And so part of why I do what I do is to remind us all that, you know, to try to do what we love is not just like some pie in the sky thing. When we're not doing what we love, when we're doing things that just make us feel beautiful or like workaholics, then we're walking through the world feeling pretty miserable. And that's what we convey to one another. But if we're showing up in connection from our hearts with one another, that profoundly changes the impact of how we walk through the world. And so it's not just this, oh, that's nice, and gosh, was I lucky to have this great dad. That's what my dad taught me, and that's what I'm trying to pass on to other people.
No, that is a fantastic note to end on. Victoria Price, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So Amanda, there's the interview with the lovely, lovely Victoria Price, who was an absolute delight, and you can tell there's just so much love for her father there. What do you think?
Honestly, that's fantastic.
And I love how much that she spoke about at length about how Vincent Price wasn't just it wasn't just an actor doing sort of horror films, but also a true gentleman and lover of history, and he had his passions of cooking and fishing and travel, just trying to build up the wider, bigger picture of a man that left us with not only such a large body of work, but just that really just sounded like a really, really nice man.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting to hear a kind of different take on somebody who we all know as an icon of horror and an icon of film in general. I feel like it's just really interesting to hear from his family.
Yeah.
About real life Vincent Price.
That's right. I mean, I feel like I've met him now, even though obviously he's been dead, sadly, for 30 years maybe, I think.
Long time. Long time.
Long time. I mean, he lived to a very, ripe age, didn't he?
He did.
And making horror films all the way up to the end. I mean, how about that?
Incredible. A true icon of our time.
Yeah, he was. And as I said on the interview there, I'm hoping to meet up with her when she comes to England. Actually, why don't we just invite her down for your birthday?
Let's do it.
Same country, continent, isn't it? It's easier for her to get to Florida than Britain, I'd imagine.
Let's make it work.
Yeah, okay. So, anyway, discussion time. We've got a trip report. We've spoken about your hollybobs. We'll go into that in more detail on another show. But you've hit the ground running. You've also been somewhere else recently, I believe. I
have. So this past weekend, I headed to a horror convention called For the Love of Horror. It was their second year of doing their event in the UK, and something insane happened. We had a Lost Boys reunion. Absolutely mind-blowing.
So for those that don't know who you're referring to, do they need an introduction? Or?
Well, basically, The Lost Boys was probably one of the greatest vampire films of our time.
Yeah.
And probably one of the most iconic vampire films of our time. So at this reunion, we had a couple of people missing, which I'll cover in a second. But at the reunion, we had Kiefer Sutherland.
Wait, Kiefer?
Kiefer was there.
He was there?
He was there. But I'm going to get to Kiefer momentarily because I've got more on Kiefer.
I have such a man crush on Kiefer Sutherland.
Do you? Kiefer.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Ever since 24.
So Kiefer is going to be one of the additions. So basically, if you guys don't already follow me on Instagram or Twitter or listen to my other podcasts that we do, I have horror themed sleeves, tattoos.
Yeah.
So I have a classic monsters arm, and then I have a fantasy / horror arm. So Kiefer is going to be one of my next additions. Kiefer as Vampire David.
Oh.
From Lost Boys. So I'm a hardcore Lost Boys fan, so this was a big deal to me.
Yeah.
So we had Alex Winter.
Okay.
Who's also Bill in Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
We had Billy Worth, who plays Dwayne, one of the Lost Boys, and he, let me tell you, is my ultimate teenage crush.
Billy Worth.
So for years I've been like, oh my life, Billy Worth. And then when I found out that he was going to be there, I was like, I can't believe these eyeballs are going to see Billy Worth in real life.
That's a man that's aged well right there.
Oh, he is still babing. He is still babing. So we had Jason Patrick, who plays Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Jameson Newlander, who plays Alan Frog of the Frog Brothers, who are the vampire hunting duo.
Mm-hmm.
We also had musical guests in the form of Tim Capello, who is, of course, the saxophone player from the fairground scene.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's all muscly and oiled up, playing his little sax. Mm-hmm. So he performed the song I Still Believe from the film.
Yeah.
And we had G. Tom Mack, who sings the iconic Cry Little Sister, which is at the beginning of the film. So they both did performances. That was surreal. Like, that was so strange to see.
Crazy.
Honestly, I sat there the whole time like, is this real life?
Where was this though?
This was in Manchester.
Oh, okay.
So it was at an exhibition hall in Manchester. And so our main people that were missing first, before I get more into it, Corey Feldman.
Okay, all right.
And then, of course, we didn't have the late Corey Haim and the late Brooke McCarter.
Yeah.
So they were noticeably missing. Kiefer didn't take part in the panel on Saturday because he wasn't there.
Right.
But he did on the Sunday do autograph signings, and he did photo opportunities. So you could get a photo with all of the cast that were there. I think it was about £250-ish for a picture with all of the cast, which is 100% worth it. It sold out very, very quickly. I couldn't get it as much as I tried. Yeah.
Oh, man.
I know, but it was absolutely insane. So they even had a celebrity guest in the form of Keith Lemon.
Keith Lemon,
who is an avid Lost Boys and Kiefer Sutherland fan.
Oh, you know.
He made the trip to go and meet Kiefer. So basically, I didn't know this until this weekend. Kiefer Sutherland has a music career now.
Well, yeah, apparently I was told that he lives in a recording studio.
Wow.
So apparently he bought, I don't know if this is true, but he bought a recording studio and turned the upstairs into a flat, like an apartment.
Wow.
And then he rents out the recording studio. And it was something to do with a musical career that he was pursuing.
Well, he basically made a fly-in visit, so he didn't stay at the convention for the whole day on Sunday. Mm-hmm. He stayed 2 hours to do the photo ops and the autographs, and then he was playing a gig in Manchester that evening.
Wow.
Yeah, it's country music.
Oh, okay.
It's not what I expected.
No.
But good on you, Kiefer.
I'm a big Johnny Cash fan, so...
It's his own stamp on it, I think. But this is the first leg of his tour. He'll be back next year, so you've got opportunity to go and see him in all of his musical glory.
Oh, I might do that then.
Go for it.
He is half British, isn't he?
I don't know. I feel like he's Canadian. Maybe he might be half British. I'm not as big of a Kiefer fan as what you clearly are.
Well,
I just like Lost Boys.
Yeah, he's half Canadian, half British.
Right.
So he probably can just come over here and do his stuff without any visas or anything, I suppose. Enough about his passport arrangements. Yeah, what else did we get up to? You get up to then?
So the Lost Boys panel was very interesting in that there was an awful lot of questions directed to Alex Winter about Bill and Ted 3.
Oh God, really?
Yeah, an awful lot. And when I was watching, so basically they had the photo opportunities set up on one side of a hall and the panels were on the other side. But if you were sat watching a panel on the Saturday, at least you could see over to the photo ops. And I'd say a solid 40% of people that were getting pictures of Alex Winter were making him do the Bill and Ted gesture.
Oh, really? Did you?
I didn't get my picture with him.
Oh,
I only got one picture from the convention, and that was with Bill Moseley, who is Otis Driftwood in House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects and Three from Hell.
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah.
I did want to get my picture with Billy Worth, but I thought that's playing the danger game because I'll try and take him home. Basically, I like conventions. It's not very often that I go to them, and I think this was probably one of my first big horror ones that I've been to where I've stayed for the entire weekend. Wow. And I didn't really know how the photographs were going to work and like what timings I was going to be able to work out with panels and stuff. Because I was more interested in the panels than anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Not super overly obsessive about meeting people. I'd rather hear the story because I think meeting someone is like a 2-second thing. It's a quick 2-second picture. And if there's a panel on, so a lot of the photos that were on, there would be panels on with maybe Kane Hodder, who is Jason in some of the Friday the 13th, or other members of the Lost Boys, or they had the Soul group there, so they had like Tobin Bell there. There was an awful lot of panels going on, and I was more into watching those panels, and of course Tim Capella doing his performance than I was with pictures. So I did the last picture of the day on the Sunday, which was Bill Moseley, and he is my favourite actor.
Gosh.
So I was very excited.
So they had Jigsaw there, Tobin Bell.
Yes. So he was there. He did a panel and he did the autographs and the photos. They had a couple of the other guys from Saw there. They had the original It cast from the 1990 It.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So they had Emily Perkins, they had Marlon Taylor, Ben Heller, Brandon Crane, Adam Frazee. So they were the original Losers Club. And then they had Jared Blancard there, who played the bully, Henry.
Okay, yeah.
So that was very, very interesting. It was very cool to hear stories about how intimidating Tim Curry was on set.
Really? Oh, my God.
His love chain smoking.
Yeah, there's some photos of him like with an umbrella having a fag.
Every single one of them in every story that they shared somehow involved Tim Curry chain smoking.
Really? Oh, dear.
But they were very keen to get fans involved for the 30th anniversary of the original It next year. So what they were saying they'd love to do is to have a similar kind of thing as what we had at For the Love of Horror this last weekend, a reunion, but they'd love to have Tim Curry involved and maybe some others involved and do like a really big celebration for it. But the people with the power basically need to know that that's what the fans want. So if you're a big It fan and you'd love to see a reunion for the 30th anniversary, get involved online and show that that's what you want. Because that's what I want.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, the new films are good, but, for me, I don't think they can beat the original.
No, and I think what it is, I was talking with my partner about it while we were there, and I think Emily Perkins kind of alluded a little bit to it as well, is that when the original It came out, it was on TV.
Yeah, it was. That's right. Yeah.
And so it was a lot more easily accessible for kids to accidentally watch or to be able to watch at sleepover.
It was quite a few episodes, wasn't it? And I think in this country, they edited them all together, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that I was a baby when it very, very first came out, but I know that I've seen it on UK TV as one long film, and I've seen it split into two.
Well, I remember as a kid going to Blockbusters, and they used to put all the new releases. This is how old I am, by the way. All the new releases around the outside wall, and you'd walk along and see what was new. And I remember it being on the shelf for just weeks and weeks and weeks, just because it was really popular.
I remember watching it at a sleepover for the first time, and I must have been no older than about 8 or 9.
I mean, that explains so much.
It does indeed. And for a little bit, I was like, oh my God, I am horrified. But then I was like, no, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that has one of my all-time favourite lines from any film ever made is the poem that he writes to Beverly, and it's, your hair is winter fire, January embers, my heart burns there too. And that's literally my favourite line from any film. So it's very special to see those guys, and they did a panel on the Saturday and on the Sunday, and hopefully they'll be returning for next year because we just got the dates announced for next year's event already. So that will be on the 17th and 18th of October, and it's going to be in the same place. So it's the Bowlers Exhibition Centre in Manchester. It's very close to the Trafford Centre.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit out of the way from the city.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, I haven't been to Manchester for a very, very long time, and apparently it's all completely different now. So I would love to actually have a weekend in Manchester. Sounds good.
Absolutely. And for Star Wars fans, the upstairs of this exhibition centre is a Star Wars cantina style bar.
Okay.
Even I thought it was cool. As a person who's not a massive Star Wars fan, I can appreciate that it's cool, but I'm not as hardcore as what a lot of people are. It was a very, very cool bar. They also honestly, I can't get over how cool these guys are. So basically, the guys that run this event are like uber horror fans. So they put on this event as fans for fans, and you can see that. So there's a lot of different things that you could do on top of the guest panels and the photos and the autographs. So they had a ghost hunting workshop.
Okay, interesting.
And that was put on by Twilight Ghost Tours, who do ghost tours and ghost hunts down south. So close to you than they are to me.
Okay, yeah.
And so they had me do a seance in front of an audience.
So you were there for this seance? They actually did one?
So I did the seance.
Oh, you did the seance?
They made me do it.
Okay.
With 3 other people.
Uh-huh.
So we had this Ouija board, and we had to see if there's any spirits in this building, and it was a strange experience, let me tell you. I've done Ouija boards in the past, but not in front of an audience. It was intimidating.
Oh, wow.
I know, it was weird. And I was like kicking underneath the table to see if there was like a magnet and like who's pushing this, but nobody was pushing it. And I'm like, okay, someone's got to be controlling it. So I'm like, everybody let go on 3.
Yeah.
But it was a strange experience. But we also learned how to use dowsing rods.
Uh-huh.
They are little metal rods that are in a kind of L shape that you hold in your hands. And they used to use them, I think they still actually do use them for finding water sources.
Oh, yeah. It's an old wives' tale, but yeah.
Okay, so with those, you kind of hold them in your hands and you're like, show me my yes. And then whatever the rods do, so they might cross over. So they'll kind of move towards each other and cross over without you moving. And that might be a yes. Or they might stay straight and that'd be a yes. And then you're like, show me my no. And it'll do whatever shape it makes is your no. So then the kind of process for using those is to be like, hey, is there a spirit around? And then it'll give you a yes or no, but it's going to be a yes if it moves. And then you'll just ask it various questions and it'll be a yes or a no. So that was interesting. And then we also learned how to use pendulums. So they tend to be crystals or other kind of things on a chain, and they will vibrate or swing around or make different shapes depending on how you interact with it. Again, that was very interesting. It worked really well for me. It didn't work at all for my partner. I told him it's because he doesn't have a soul.
Well, maybe he sold it to the devil for something.
Well, I sold mine to Halloween Horror Nights that time to the Soul Collector, and I didn't get anything back for it. So
Oh yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
We just got a very lame countdown at the end of it.
yeah. But then we also had the opportunity to do their free scare maze, which honestly was intense.
Okay, what made it intense then?
Basically, the very first portion of the maze, I'd say probably about a good quarter of the entire maze, was a very small tunnel that you had to crawl through on your hands and knees. And I'm small, and this was small to me.
Oh man.
So then either side of you, as you're crawling, would be scare actors that would be grabbing at you. Or like one of them had put the arm out so I couldn't pass. So my partner, who's 6'2", so it was very cramped for him, had obviously crawled away and crawled out of it. And I'm just stuck in this tiny tunnel like, oh, I can't get through because this skeleton guy has trapped me. It was very, very dark. There was sheets all either side of you, so it was just hands popping out of the sheets and grabbing at you. And then we got out of that, it was clowns, it was Michael Myers,
Oh my god.
a whole bunch of like deranged toy kind of things. And they were very, very, I said to you before we started recording, it was grabby.
He was grabbing. Yeah, see, we don't get that with Halloween Horror Nights, do we?
No, I think that if someone touched you at Halloween Horror Nights and they didn't know you, it'd be a lawsuit waiting to happen, or you'd have to sign something at least. I didn't sign anything going in. I didn't know what I was expecting. I've never crawled through a haunted experience in my life, other than when I've been scared and I've crawled out of one. So it was a strange experience, but it was absolutely fantastic.
Wow, it sounds terrifying, if I'm honest, because I do not like small spaces whatsoever.
No, and there was no warning of it either, so it was kind of like you queue up to get in, you go through the front door of it, and then it was like, okay, get in the tunnel. I was like, okay.
Gosh.
Good job I drank my beer before I came in.
Yeah, try.
But it was absolutely an incredible weekend, and they had a traders hall with some of the most amazing horror collectibles, horror masks that I've ever seen. I bought a Fangoria from probably about 7 or 8 years ago, which is Elvira, very scantily dressed as a mummy. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to have that. Because Fangoria isn't very easily accessible in the UK.
No. I can imagine it's expensive to have it shipped over, I'd imagine. I don't know.
Yeah, it is indeed. So I managed to get hold of this old... Obviously, I buy everything that has Elvira on anyway. She's my spooky queen. But it was cool to be able to get that. But there was so much to do. And there was an awful lot of kids there, which I love. I absolutely love. I love kids being involved and loving horror and Halloween things. And it was so cool to see them so happy and kind of interacting with cosplayers. I love cosplayers.
Yeah.
Some fantastic cosplayers there this weekend. And there's a lot of kids cosplaying too. And again, warmed my heart.
I mean, it sounds like an incredible event. And how fantastic you got to meet, not only like the cast of the Lost Boys and Kiefer Sutherland, but the cast of the original It. I mean, that's just
It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I feel like there was something there for everybody, and I don't know how they're going to top this next year, but apparently they've got big plans, so I'm very excited to see it.
Well, that's good. I mean, if it's successful for them, which it sounds like it was, then they've made plenty of money off of it, and they can use that to invest by getting even more names for next year. Perhaps even bigger than the ones they got. But so you said Alex Winter was there. He just wrapped on Bill and Ted 3. Did he tell us anything that we don't know?
No, nothing that we don't know. I'll post all of the clips again on our Twitter page from Alex Winter. I'll post all of the Lost Boys things on there. He had just said that it was a very intense film to shoot because they're facing themselves in a lot of scenes, so it was like double the work. It was very, very cool. He talked a little bit about Rufus and how they're not going to replace him.
No, well, that's understandable, isn't it?
Yeah. But there will be a nice link to him in the film
Oh, okay.
in regards to things to do with his family.
Right.
No, but there was an awful lot of Halloween Horror Nights fans at this convention.
Really?
I saw a lot of Halloween Horror Nights t-shirts and hoodies.
Wow, that's something.
Yeah, it was cool. Like, it's very rare that I get to see an obvious Halloween Horror Nights fan in the UK that I don't already know. And so it was cool to be sat in a panel and be surrounded by maybe 10 or 20 different Halloween Horror Nights shirts. It was cool.
Maybe I should go next year and vlog some of my books up there.
Honestly, set yourself up a little trader stall. We'll have a good weekend.
Great. We could get you in your Elvira gear. You can be like, beckoning them to the desk, and then I can flog them a book or two.
Honestly, I saw one woman dressed as Elvira, and I was like, that's it, I'm going home. I'm going to get my costume. And I really wanted to come back in an Elvira cosplay. But maybe I'll do that during Halloween week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Who knows what costumes I have up my sleeve this year.
So this is hopefully, we're coming out to you the week of Halloween. So you've probably been to your party, but so do you know what you're going as this year, or?
I have so far 5 different costumes that I'm wearing for 5 different things.
Wow, 5 different things.
So they will all be posted online when I've made them and wore them. However,
Okay. Yeah.
I have very special plans for Halloween night. So I have booked a stay at the most haunted hotel in the UK for Halloween night, and I'm going to record some bits for this podcast. So I'm not going to do a full episode out of it. I'm just going to put some little bits, and it's probably me running away screaming with my dowsing rods.
With your dad. Oh God! Don't trip over them.
I'm like, Chris, I broke my leg, but there's definitely a ghost.
Yeah, the ghost has nothing to do with it, but still. So now you've learned the art of ghost hunting. Mm-hmm. You're literally going to employ these skills on Halloween in this country's most haunted hotel.
Yes, absolutely. So I've already started my search for my ghost hunting materials. So I have a few days for those to arrive, and the plan is that we are going to check in, do a little bit of ghost hunting, and then we're going to go to a Halloween event, and then we're going to come back slightly tipsy and continue with the ghost hunt.
Sweet.
I'm very excited about it.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm not 100% sure what our plans are. I think we've got people coming over, but as you may have seen from my social media, we've been going pumpkin carving mad, and we've been putting them outside our house. And where we've been doing it now, sort of quite early in the season for the typical Halloween follower, but not for people in this house. The pumpkins have started to like rot essentially, and like ordinary hedgerow in this country, you get like hawthorns and stuff. They got like those sort of red berries, Mm-hmm. So there's a hedge outside my house, and we've been putting the pumpkins out there. And where they're starting to rot, they're starting to sort of like droop and generally sag. And then where it's rained a lot recently, the red berries have fallen off the hedges and onto the pumpkins, and now it looks like they're like bleeding blood from their eyes.
Amazing.
So they look even more terrifying, and I haven't even had to try.
Wow, I love that. I loved that you did a Halloween, as in the film Halloween, themed pumpkin. That was my favourite one that you did.
Yeah, that was my favourite. That was a really big pumpkin as well. So I'm told the bigger the pumpkin, the longer they take to decay. So yeah, he's proudly at the foot of my house.
Perfect. Love it.
Right, okay, so I think I'm looking at the clock. I mean, we have gone well over the half hour that we set ourselves, so I feel that will probably...
We always do.
Exactly. I think this will be a current, a recurring theme. So I'll just wrap up then. Okay, well, thank you for joining for our first ever episode of the Halloween Half Hour. I hope you've enjoyed your time here. We are part of the hhnunofficial.com and After Dark Podcast Network. Thank you to the Spooky Voice Guy. Thank you to Boston White, aka Amanda. And all I've got left to say is happy nightmares.
And I've been the spooky voice guy. Good night and happy nightmares, one and all. Mwah!